What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA. If you're a musician and you care about how your music is distributed, is marketed, is promoted, then stay tuned, watch this one, because I'm gonna get out my little crystal ball and I'm gonna tell you how this shit is gonna play out. SoundCloud is fucked, they're gonna die. Spotify is also fucked, but not quite as fucked. And Apple Music, I think, is going to be the big winner. So let me tell you why I believe all these things are true. Let's start with SoundCloud. SoundCloud's problem is that they do not have a workable business model. It's that simple. You've probably heard people use the term business model in many different ways, but really what it means is how does your company make money? So for example, like Hulu and Netflix, their business model is subscription. Bandcamp's business model is they're a marketplace. They get a percentage of anything that's sold on their platform. SoundCloud really does not have a workable business model. They've tried a few things. They tried a premium version for users that didn't work. They have ads, but they'll never win because basically it's impossible to make real money off of online ads unless you're Google or Facebook. They capture something like 90% of all advertising revenue spent online goes to Facebook and Google. I do digital marketing for a living, and that's where I spend all my money. You've seen these big companies like Vice and BuzzFeed struggle because they can't make any money off of ads. Well, look, if Vice and BuzzFeed can't make it work, SoundCloud is not going to be able to make it work either. The way that they are currently trying to monetize, their current business model is by offering this like premium version for musicians. You pay like $10 a month, I think, and you get access to more storage space and some analytics and maybe some other stuff. But here's the problem. Musicians are cheap and they don't invest in marketing themselves, and they never will. This drives me insane. I don't know why, but think about it. Like, they'll spend $2,000 on a guitar, they'll spend all this money to have somebody record and mix and master their shit. They'll spend money on merch and vinyl and fucking drinks at the bar, but they won't spend a fucking dime to market their shit. I mean, listen to how much people piss and moan about Facebook and Instagram, about organic reach, as though Facebook and Instagram somehow owe you like free exposure. Why the fuck would they owe you anything? And if you believe in your shit, why wouldn't you invest some money in spreading the word about it, right? It's just the way their brains work. Like, for some reason, they won't invest in marketing. And then they wonder why they are not getting any traction. Well, the reason why is very simple, because you just made this thing and then you didn't tell anybody about it and you didn't put any money behind promoting it and spreading the word about it, right? Anyway, that is a whole other thing I could talk about forever. But the point is, musicians are cheap. Musicians are broke also, but they'll find money for gear. They'll find money for shows and drinks and all that shit. They'll find money for weed and collectible toys. They'll find money for all kinds of shit, but they will never find money for marketing their music. So that's the problem. The thing I read is that SoundCloud has something like 100,000 paying subscribers for their premium service, which might sound good because that's $1 million a month, but it's not so good when you consider that Spotify and Apple Music have 20 million subscribers, and that SoundCloud has taken on almost $500 million of investment. So making $1 million a month is nothing when your company has taken on $500 million of investor money and you need to grow. Now, this might be surprising to you, and it is a little bit ironic because SoundCloud is for sure the most like culturally relevant of all the streaming services. The coolest, newest, most interesting shit in music is happening on SoundCloud. There's no question about that. I mean, that's why we call it cloud rap, right? Which is like the biggest thing in music in years. But hype doesn't turn into dollars unless you have a business model, and SoundCloud doesn't have one. So that brings me to number 2, Spotify. So like I said, Spotify is also fucked, but not quite as fucked as SoundCloud, because Spotify actually has a business model and they have 20 million paying subscribers, which is awesome, but they have 2 big problems. Number 1 is that Apple Music is growing faster than they are. So I found this article on Yahoo Finance. It says, can Spotify stop Apple in its tracks? Spotify is losing the US streaming market to Apple, according to industry leaders who spoke to Financial Times recently. At the end of June, Spotify had 22 million US subscribers. Apple had 21 million US subscribers at the end of June, but Apple is growing faster than Spotify is, so they're going to take over Spotify as the number 1 player very soon in terms of number of paying users. That would be okay. You know, maybe Spotify could go, well, that's all right. We're okay with being the number 2 player as long as we have a profitable company, but that's the problem. They don't have a profitable company. They're burning cash. They're financially irresponsible, in my personal opinion. You see their offices and they're fucking lavish. They pay their employees really well. They have like really generous compensation and benefits packages. And look, I'm not saying that you should like screw or try to, shortchange your employees, but if you don't have a profitable company, spending like millions of dollars on fancy offices and paying people sky-high salaries is probably not the best thing to do. And there are other problems that they are at the mercy of record labels because of the royalty model that exists in music. So people say Spotify is the Netflix of music, and from a user perspective, that's true. You just search for what you want and then you go listen to it or watch it. But from a financial perspective, that's not true, and it's an important difference. I'll explain why. For Netflix, content is a fixed cost. So if they want to get, Full House or whatever on Netflix for the next 3 years, they call up the producers of Full House and they pay them $5 million or whatever it is to have Full House on Netflix for the next 3 years. And no matter how many people watch it, they're never going to pay more than $5 million. So whether one person watches Full House or 5 billion people watch Full House, their cost is the same. So as they get more streams, more people, like they make more money, but their costs stay the same. Now, that is not true for Spotify. Because of the royalty structure, content for Spotify is a variable cost. So the more people listen to Drake, the more money they have to pay Drake and royalties. So you see how it gets very hard for them to ever come out ahead. They get more users and they get more streams, but then their costs go up too. So it's hard for them to get like escape velocity, right? Because of the royalty model. And so that's a real problem for Spotify. And they pay, I think, like 80% of their revenue out in royalties. The record labels are basically taking all the profit. So the good news is for artists and labels, there's actually some money made in streaming now. Like, you can look up these articles. People are making real money off of streaming now. That's another discussion. There is money to be made in streaming now, but it's going to the labels and the publishers, not Spotify. So that's a problem for their business. So Spotify is doing okay. They've got some problems, but one thing they do have in their favor is cultural relevance. They've got all these playlists that are curated, right? Like, Rap Caviar is a big example. There's all these other ones. They do a great job of curating these things. People listen to them a lot. People pay attention to them. So putting an artist on the right playlist can make a big difference in their career. If you get on the right playlist, millions of people are going to see it. Millions of people are going to listen to it. It could make a difference for you. So Spotify has that in their favor as a negotiating point with the labels and stuff. They can say, well, look, you need to give us a break because we can help you break artists. Apple does not really have that kind of cultural currency. They've got Beats Radio or whatever, but I don't really think people care that much about it. So SoundCloud and Spotify definitely are more culturally relevant than Apple Music, but their business is not in such good shape. So that brings me to the third one, Apple Music. I'll tell you why this one is going to be the winner. It's much easier for Apple to get a new user than it is for Spotify because they've got all these credit cards on file. Like, anybody with one of these things, they can convert into an Apple Music customer fairly easily. The second thing, which is a really big one, is that Apple Music does not need to be profitable on its own. SoundCloud and Spotify, those need to be profitable as standalone businesses because that's the only thing they do, right? That's the purpose of this company. But Apple Music does not need to be profitable. Apple is the iPhone company. Like 90% of their revenue comes from selling iPhones. As long as Apple Music is good enough to keep you tied into the Apple ecosystem and keep you on the iPhone, then they're good. They don't need it to be profitable on its own. It's the same thing with like Google Play and Amazon Music and Prime Video. All these things, these things that exist within a larger company just need to support the bigger business. They don't need to be profitable on their own. So that's tough. When Apple can get customers cheaper than you and they don't need to be profitable like you do, that's a tough fucking spot for Spotify. So what does this mean for you as a musician, as somebody that's putting music out there? Well, I would not count on SoundCloud staying around forever. I think probably it's gonna be the same thing as Napster. So Napster, if you guys remember back in the 90s, they changed the game in the way that music is distributed and consumed, but they never had a real business. So they got bought and sold a few times and then ultimately just shut down a few years ago. I think the same thing's gonna happen to SoundCloud. They'll get traded around a little bit and then eventually someone's gonna be like, fuck this, like we're just gonna kill this thing. This is a waste of our time. So you're gonna see a headline on billboard.com in a few years that's like, today is the last day of SoundCloud, whatever. So don't count on SoundCloud being around forever because they don't have a business. Spotify, I think, probably will stay around. What I believe will happen, they're publicly traded now, so I think eventually probably somebody like Sony or Universal or someone like that will buy Spotify and absorb it into their business where it doesn't need to be profitable. I mentioned Sony or Universal because those two companies own most of the music out there. So for these guys, the royalty thing isn't really a problem because they'd be paying themselves. So for them, it might actually be a profitable investment, or it might make sense for them strategically to, control the most culturally relevant distribution platform. So that's, I think, will happen with Spotify. I don't think it's ever going to be a successful company on its own. I think it's going to get acquired by somebody else, and that will leave Apple Music as what I think will become the most successful successful, the most dominant streaming platform in the same way as iTunes was for all the same reasons. So that is my thoughts. As a user, that's good for us. You know, competition is good for us. Spotify is great. Apple Music is great. You know, there's Tidal, there's Amazon Music, whatever. We have lots of options. There's many, many, many different ways for us to listen to music. It's never been better to be a music listener before. And actually, I don't think it's ever been better to be a musician as well. You've got so many great places to distribute your music. You've got so many different ways of marketing it. So if you're a musician, please invest in your fucking marketing. Don't be stupid. Don't spend 1,000 fucking hours making this EP and then 1 hour promoting it and then wonder why nobody is listening to your shit. It's really simple. Spend as much time promoting your shit as you do making it. It's very simple. If you spend $1,000 recording an EP, spend $1,000 on marketing it. Like, that's the way this works. Like, you can't expect attention to somehow come to you for free. Like, that's not how the world works. Anyway, I could rant about that forever. I won't. I'm gonna sign off for now. If you liked this video, if you thought it was entertaining or informative or interesting in any way, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel. If for some bizarre, strange reason you do not want to subscribe, that's okay. Please like the video, leave a comment, share it with a friend. Anything you can do to help spread the word would be very much appreciated. And with that, I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA. I'm signing off for now, but I will see